Hello there, opera enthusiasts and curious souls alike. Today we're diving into the absolutely captivating world of Giacomo Puccini, a man whose life was every bit as dramatic as the operas he composed. Picture this, a musical dynasty spanning to centuries, scandalous affairs that rocked Italian society, and some of the most beloved operas ever written. Buckle up, because Puccini's story is one wild ride through passion, music, and enough drama to fuel a dozen soap operas. Let's start at the very beginning, shall we? Giacomo Antonio Domenico Michele II Maria Puccini was born on December 22, 1858, in the charming Tuscan city of Lucca. Now, hear us what makes this rather special. Puccini wasn't just some chap who fancied a go at composing. Oh no, he was born into what you might call operatic royalty. For 2 whole centuries, the Puccini family had been the musical directors of the Cathedral of San Martino in Lucca. His great-great-grandfather, also named Giacomo, had started this remarkable tradition back in 1712. Each generation dutifully followed suit: Antonio, then Domenico, then Michele, Giacomo's father. It's rather poetic, isn't it? The family names were passed down like a musical inheritance: Giacomo Antonio Domenico Michele. For generations of musical mastery, all leading up to our Giacomo, who would become the most famous of them all. But here's the twist: while his ancestors served the church, our Giacomo would serve passion itself. Young Giacomo was the 6th of 9 children, and when his father Michele died in 1864, little Giacomo was just 6 years old. The family expected him to follow the sacred tradition and become the next cathedral organist. Initially, he did just that, studying music and even composing his Mars Messa di Gloria in 1880, which beautifully honored his family's church music heritage. But fate had other plans. At the age of 17, Puccini made a journey that would change everything. He walked 20 miles to Pisa to see a performance of Verdi's Aida. That single evening transformed him from a dutiful church musician into a man obsessed with opera. The stage, the drama, the raw human emotion, this was his calling, not the quiet sanctity of cathedral music. With help from his uncle Nicolausa and a grant from Queen Margherita herself, Puccini headed off to Milan Conservatory in 1880. And what delicious irony this was. He lived the very bohemian existence he would later immortalize in La Bohème. Picture this: young Puccini and his roommate cooking meals in their tiny room, which was strictly forbidden. One would play piano fortissimo to mask the clatter of pots and pans from the landlord. Years later, when audiences wept at the poverty and passion of Rodolfo and Mimi, they were witnessing Puccini's own memories transformed into pure musical gold. Now we come to the romance that would define Puccini's life and nearly destroy it. In 1884, while giving piano lessons, Puccini began an affair with the absolutely captivating Elvira Gemignani. There was just one tiny problem: she was already married to one Narciso Gemignani. Puccini, never one to let convention stand in the way of passion, swept Elvira off her feet anyway. Soon enough, Elvira found herself pregnant with Puccini's child. The scandal rocked the respectable town of Lucca so thoroughly that Puccini barely set foot there again in his lifetime. Elvira left her first son, Renato, with her husband and fled with Puccini to start their new life together. Their son Antonio was born in 1886, and they settled in the fishing village of Tor del Lago by Lake Mossaciucli in Tuscany. For nearly 20 years, Puccini and Elvira lived together unmarried, which was absolutely scandalous for the times. Then, in February 1903, fate intervened in the most Puccini-esque way imaginable. Narciso Gemignani was killed, allegedly by the husband of a woman he'd been having an affair with. How's that for operatic justice? Finally, Puccini and Elvira could marry, which they did in 1904. But if you thought marriage would settle our composer down, you'd be terribly mistaken. Puccini's wandering eye soon fixed upon young Doria Manfredi, their servant girl. Elvira, being no fool, suspected something was afoot and began a campaign of harassment against poor Doria that was both relentless and public. She accused the girl of being Puccini's mistress in front of the entire village. The pressure became unbearable for Doria. On January 23, 1909, she took her own life by swallowing poison. The autopsy proved she had been innocent, still a virgin. The Manfredi family brought charges against Elvira for persecution and calumny, creating one of the most famous scandals in Italian society. Elvira was found guilty but avoided sentencing through legal negotiations, while Puccini paid substantial damages to the family. Here's where the story takes another delicious turn. In 2007, nearly a century later, documents were discovered proving that Puccini had indeed been having an affair, but not with Doria. His secret lover was actually Giulia Manfredi, Doria's cousin. Poor Doria had been acting as a go-between for the secret affair, which explains Elvira's suspicions and the tragic misunderstanding that cost a young woman her life. Through all this personal drama, Puccini was creating some of the most beloved operas in history. His genius lay in understanding human emotion and translating it into unforgettable melodies. La Bohème in 1896 captured the bittersweet romance of youth and poverty. Tosca in 1900 gave us political intrigue and passionate love. Madama Butterfly in 1904, though initially a disaster at La Scala due to poor rehearsals, became one of the most performed operas worldwide. Puccini had an extraordinary gift for exotic settings that transported audiences far from their drawing rooms. Madama Butterfly took them to Japan, turned it to ancient China, and The Girl of the Golden West to the American frontier during the Gold Rush. Each opera was meticulously researched, with Puccini obsessing over authentic musical details from each culture. What made Puccini truly special was his relationship with the stage itself. He wasn't just composing pretty tunes, he was crafting complete theatrical experiences. He worked closely with librettists like Luigi Illica and Giuseppe Giacosa, understanding that opera was about storytelling as much as singing. He would attend rehearsals religiously, making notes about staging, costumes, and dramatic timing. Puccini knew that his heroines, Mimi, Tosca, Butterfly, Turandot, had to be more than just voices. They had to be living, breathing women who could break your heart. Puccini's love affair with cigarettes proved to be his undoing. By 1923, he was complaining constantly of a sore throat. The diagnosis was throat cancer, and he travelled to Brussels for experimental treatment. He never completed his final masterpiece, Turandot. On November 29, 1924, Giacomo Puccini died, leaving behind his greatest puzzle, an opera that ends with the mysterious princess still wrapped in her riddles. The great conductor Arturo Toscanini conducted the premiere of Turandot at La Scala in 1926. When the performance reached the point where Puccini had stopped, composing, Toscanini laid down his baton and announced to the hushed audience, "Here the opera ends, because here the maestro died." Puccini achieved something remarkable. He brought Italian opera into the modern age while never losing sight of pure human emotion. He understood that audiences didn't want just beautiful music, they wanted to feel something profound. Whether it is the heart-wrenching "O My O Baby No Coro" from Johnny Schicchi or the soaring Nessun Dorma from Turandot, Puccini's melodies have the power to move people to tears more than a century later. He was called the greatest composer of Italian opera after Verdi, and rightfully so. While Verdi gave us grand political dramas, Puccini gave us intimate human stories. He painted love in all its forms, young and hopeful in La Bohème, passionate and destructive in Tosca, naive and tragic in Madama Butterfly. So there you have it, Giacomo Puccini, a man who lived with the same intensity he poured into his music. A composer who broke with 2 centuries of family tradition to follow his passion, who loved unwisely but deeply, and who created works of such emotional power that they continue to fill opera houses around the world. Puccini understood something fundamental about the human condition, that we are all capable of great love and great folly, often simultaneously. His operas don't judge their characters, they simply present them in all their flawed, beautiful humanity. And perhaps that's why, more than a century after his death, we still find ourselves humming his melodies and weeping at his stories. Next time you hear O So Fanciulla or Vissi d'Arte, remember the man behind the music, complex, passionate, and utterly, brilliantly human. Until next time, this has been your guide through the magnificent mess that was Giacomo Puccini's life. Puccini's passion, the scandalous life behind opera's greatest hits. That is all for today. See you next time with another tale. Ciao.